Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Munja Vajre Bhava Mahasamaya Sato Aon Vajra Sattva Samaya Anupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishtar Dedo Membava Suto Kayo Membava Subo Kayo Membava Anurato Membhava Sarva Siddhim Membrayacha Sarva Karma Sujame Chitang Shreya Guru Aho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Munja Vajre Bhava Mahasamaya Sadhu. So first, let me do the reading transmission of the particular sadhana that we have shared for this black tar Ekajata. So first of all, this particular sadhana is different from the three sadhanas that have been shared in this series. The other three sadhanas, the one of Ushnisha Vijaya, Vasundhara, and Red Gurukula, they are from the same source as the empowerment text. So those were composed in the 17th century. This particular sadhana is one that comes from the late 19th century, from Eastern Tibet by a Dragung lineage holder called Lojidung. So this is from Kham area, Eastern Tibet. This one, this fourth one, it's in verse form and more pithy, even shorter than the sadhanas that we have shared from the last three programs. So anyway, let me now do the reading transmission. So during the reading transmission, all you have to do is to listen just even to the sounds. Of course, this is a little interesting because, anyway, if we remember that the sounds, the words are the fingers pointing to the moon, then what occurs during this reading transmission is that through the vehicle of the words, the sounds, you can say that the blood, the life energy that pulses through this practice is what's really being transferred, being transmitted. So you should have that understanding when you're receiving a lung. If we were all Tibetans and we spoke Tibetan, the oral transmission has a more obvious function. You hear it for the first time, you more or less understand what you're hearing. But the reading transmission is not just for that purpose. The reading transmission is done so that we understand that, black words on white paper itself doesn't have much power, so to say. But it's when a particular practice or a particular text is embedded within a living community, so that in that way we say the transmission is not broken. comes to us from a living community that is embedded in yet a larger sense, a larger community that then connects us back to when this was first composed. Gyamne Gonjo Namla Gyabsuji Nganje Gyalwe Zepa Mijundar Shindagi Dudi Nitsamja Dowa Yonki Lamara Dagyuji Junam Mime Toni Ninjelo Beni Dendu Hongi Drodule Kijidani Pama Reochina Traze Drodu Tasham Metogin Soju Trozu Chaji Geni Radidan Drigo Gyoni Upel Topanam Shami Rota Onye Pum Borse Nisum Jusum Tukara Bonle Oto Yeshe Chen Cham Yermedem Onle Wonguru Rida Udien Sarva Tada Gata Ekajata Sabarivara Argam Badan Pushpe Duvyaloki Kende Nivede Shabda Pratichaso Si Koride Kunsan Chobe Jin Pamerang Nan Dape Lala Cho Dune Majo Kunshi Ripelong Kunang Choju Rangsem Lala To Tukarni Deng Huntang Ateng Bor Gyao Cho Jindu Chobe Jimni Jan Nangsi Do Je Sumdu Lun Om Ring Tring Hong Bell, Om Ring Tring Hong Bell, Om Ring Tring Hong Bell. Ring Ojo Yitu Chuching Gyaso Jo Golde Dapa Rabjam Lalato Yadru Nomba Jiji Zopa Zo Zopa Shelang Sampeng Mudrum So Om Bajra Sadwa Samayam Ano Balayam Bajra Sadwa Deno Dedom Membawa Sudo Kayam Membawa Sudo Kayam Dorato Membawa Sarva Siddhi Membre Ajasava Karma Sujami Chidam Aho Bhagavan Sarva Tata Kata Bajrana Munja Basri Bhava Mahasamaya Sato Kandari Sumlanga Chukungam Kudam Yeshero Parajamleba Sabsan Nyajo Jimbo Nyamlen La Yerme Tuki Tengle Rochi Sho Modele Zendele Nime Gunyan Dele Shin Se Tatu Dele Pa Kunjo Sumji Dendero Sho There are several ways to understand what the format what the format of these sadhanas. What are they based on? What do they mean? First of all, in this context, sadhana, more generally, the way, say, Hindus use it, in a more general Indian sense, it refers to spiritual discipline. So quite commonly in Hindu communities today, they will say, my sadhana is service. My sadhana is, my life is my sadhana. Here, literally, sadhana is the method for achieving siddhi. And siddhi is accomplishments. So in Tibetan, then, is translated as drup. Drup is siddhis, and drup is accomplishments. Tup is method, the method for achieving. the siddhi, the method for achieving the accomplishments. So this is a sadhana of Ekajata. So it's the method for achieving the state of Ekajati. So one way of understanding what these deity sadhanas are, they are basically, in the context of empowerment, they are what we call the path empowerment. So then there is the causal empowerment, there is the path empowerment, and there is the resultant empowerment. The resultant empowerment is the empowerment that leads up to full awakening as Buddha. So in the non-esoteric telling of the enlightenment or awakening of Siddhartha, which all Buddhist traditions accept, that what we call non-esoterics, the exoteric, the outer narrative of what was going on, basically has it that Mara came first to try to deter him, distract him for taking this final leap into the awakened state by first appealing to his appealing to his kind of common sense, you could say that, which is basically confusion. Didn't work. Tried to appeal to his attachment or lust, didn't work. Then tried to threaten him, provoke anger in him, didn't work. So none of the three poisons worked on him anymore. So then after that, it says, after he dispelled Mara, then he began this process in 3 parts of the night. First, he broke through the veil that prevented him from seeing all his past lifetimes. Then he destroyed the veil that prevented him from seeing other people's passing and moving around from lifetime to lifetime, right now, where they die, where they are born. It says that was destroyed. And in the final 3rd part of the night, then the obscuration to seeing things as they are, that got removed. And at that point, he became the awakened one, the Buddha. So this is, we say, the exoteric account of what happened. The esoteric account of what happened was that after the Maras were dispelled, then the Buddhists of the 5 families, the male and female Buddhists, male and female Bodhisattvas, male and female Wrathful deities, they, quote unquote, came and gave the resultant empowerment. And it's through the power of the resultant empowerment that they then, that he then became Buddha. That he then became Buddha, that he then became awakened. So obviously, we're not talking about literally, a bunch of individuals turn up and then poured things on his head and he became Buddha. But you sort of get an idea that the resultant empowerment is the very act of waking up. So then the causal empowerment is, these days especially, in the form of these rituals that plants, so to say, a seed that through path empowerment, meaning daily continuous practice of this sadhana, will result in actual Buddhahood. So cause empowerment is when we're introduced to how to identify, how to actualize the Buddha that we are. Again, these days, conventionally done through a ritual, but many teachers have said that there is a deeper empowerment that can happen, not in the context of ritual, and needs to happen, that deeper, even causal empowerment that is not dependent on ritual. It's basically that real aha moment, for the first time, so to say. Oh, you see into the nature of things, you see in the nature of your mind. That's the actual causal empowerment, which the ritual format provides an opportunity, an occasion, a context for that aha to happen. That aha need not happen only in that ritual context. So anyway, that's the causal empowerment. Then the path empowerment is practicing that recognition, that aha. And the resultant empowerment is when fully and completely you come face to face with that nature, you can actualize that nature. And so then in that sense then, in this short practice text, basically, it repeats what happened during the empowerment ceremony in a nutshell. If this sadhana was expanded, then all the different parts would be teased out and included in this ritual. So for people who do like these long, extensive sadhanas, some sadhanas like this stack, and in just one language, not even like Tibetan phonetics translation, this stack, right? In Tibetan itself is this stack, right? There really every aspect of the whole empowerment ceremony becomes a daily practice. And so then the explicit sections called self-empowerment. So basically, like today, before you guys came, my preparation consists of first reconnecting, you could say, with this deity principle in the form of self-generation, self becoming the deity. So after a stable sense of self-generation has been achieved, then the vase empowerment, the blessing and the preparation of the ritual objects, just generally said to be the vase, but other things too, then the vase empowerment has to happen, which is the identical process, even the words. Just here and there, some words change. Obviously, self-empowerment, it will say, myself dissolve into emptiness, and then from there arises the deity, so on and so forth. In the case of the vase empowerment, it begins with saying, this exquisite vase with all its qualities now dissolve into emptiness. From within this emptiness arises the deity, and now the vase and the ritual objects are empowered. Then there is the front generation, which is the deity appearing in the space in front of you. Then you have the deity whom you are. And then a third one, which is the deity, which is the ritual objects. So now you have three sets of the same deity. Then, the various stages of empowerment in this very simple, just three and very straightforward. Yeah? In more detail, complex versions of these sadhanas, like say you're talking about the Kala Chakra, the body empowerment, there are 11 empowerments within that general body empowerment. So then you go through these 11 stages, one by one by one by one by one one. Then you go to the next after the 11th. That usually is the first day of the Kala Chakra empowerment. Then we have the second, we have the third, the fourth, altogether 4. In the case of those types of sadhanas and empowerments. So here, it's in a very condensed form, just these 3, body, speech, and mind. So then, with this practice, you mainly, explicitly, you focus on the self-generation, yourself actualizing, experiencing, being Ekajata. So as with all practices, you begin with the practice of refuge, seeking refuge, and generating bodhichitta. So then on page 1, that's where that starts. It says, to you jewels, meaning the 3 jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, who are the sources of refuge, the sources of real protection, I go to you. So I've often said that when we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, we are saying, may I come to you. That's the first step. And the second step is, may I become like you. So this is how, fundamentally, the Buddha Dharma is not a theistic system. Just that it's not a theistic system doesn't mean, like we walk around thinking, I myself is alone and enough. Myself is enough. I just meditate that I will become enlightened or things will improve. No, I don't need anything that is out there. Then the Buddha says, there's nothing out there. Yeah, not only there's nothing out there, there's nothing in here either. So we take refuge, we seek refuge. So refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So we come to you. May I come to you? Right? So with Ekajati, with Tara, with any of these deities, with any of these Buddhas, these Buddha principles, first, of course there's a Tara out there. Why not? Of course there's a Manjushri out there. Why not? Of course there's an Avalokiteshvara that is out there. How is it that there are? Oh, come on, don't be so narcissistic. It's only in me. Right? There is Manjushri out there. Why? Because regardless of how confused I am, there are those who will see more clearly. They are the Manjushri embodiments. Of course, there is compassion out there, in the sense that no matter how uncompassionate and how self-centered I have become, nonetheless, there are so many other people who are compassionate. Of course, they are out there, right? So when it says, the deity is not out there, it's saying something different from only you. It's saying the only reliable deity at the end of the day, if it is to be found anywhere, it's to be found within us. So back to that simple statement, happiness and suffering is an inside job. But without recognizing, without seeing kindness out in the world, without seeing clarity that exists out in the world, it can become a very tight and lonely place and difficult journey if you think it's all up to me. No, the objects of refuge right now, whether we recognize that these qualities are already in us or not, thankfully and luckily, they manifest in the world out there. And so for all those of you who are out there, who are embodiments of these Buddha qualities, for those of you, the Buddha Dharma Sangha that exists out there, thank goodness that they exist out there so that I can come to you. But not I can come to you and you'll solve my problems, but may I come to you so that may I become like you. So the next line, just as the conquerors, those who have conquered their afflictive emotions, the Buddhas, just as the Buddhas did so in the past, likewise, henceforth, I shall do the same. And do what the same? May I become a guide for all wandering beings, which is what Guru, a guide, a reliable guide, a spiritual guide. Just as the conquerors, just as the Buddhas in the past have done this, have become the teacher of gods and humans. That's a common expression for what a Buddha is. I shall do the same. I joke about this. So many of us wants to be like the Dalai Lama, but nobody wants to do the work he does. That's a lot of hard work, Like, if you really think about it, what Tibetans say the Dalai Lama is, oh my gosh, the Buddha of compassion has to work so hard. Yeah, he was the emanation of the Buddha, they say, the supreme emanation of the Buddha of compassion. But he did not have a normal childhood. From the human point of view, very rudely, very cruelly, they rob him of his childhood. I don't know if he's the Buddha of compassion. I know he's not an ordinary person. But even for this non-ordinary person, he had to work so hard in order to be what he is today. So we all want that, but we don't want, even 10% of the kind of determination you have to put in it. So that's why they say, ordinary beings fear result, bodhisattvas fear the causes. Meaning here, the result of suffering and the cause of suffering. Then ordinary beings, want happiness, but not willing to create the causes of happiness. Bodhisattvas are more concerned to create the causes of happiness and not at all attached to the result of happiness. And they are more fearful of the causes of suffering and not easily deterred by the result that is suffering. So this is what we have to at least do a few percent of that, Many years ago, when I was in graduate school, one of the professors, one of these giants of the earlier generation of Buddhist studies, Westerners, professors, Professor Jeffrey Hopkins, he shared with us, he said, he was, the early days when the Tibetans first came out of Tibet, some of these old lamas, some of the most learned people in the world. So he remember asking one of his teachers, he said, so of course, someone like Jeffrey, his attraction to Tibetan Buddhism is in the intellectual. And I don't mean that as in not experiential, intellectual. What I mean is the clarity of mind was very attractive. Then, of course, these other things like, tulkus, reincarnation of so-and-so, it's always a mystery to them. Like, what's that? They said one time they asked one of the teachers, so tell me, like, training of these tulkus, like, so they are like supposed to be reincarnation of this great Lama and that great Lama. Like, how do you train these kids, And he said, one of these old teachers said, oh, very easy. When no one is around, he said, I say to them, hey, they told me you are reincarnation of so-and-so. I'm not so sure. So either you prove them right or you prove me right. You decide, okay? So say, every now and then I'll remind them, I'm not so sure. So either you prove them right, they say you're a reincarnation of so-and-so and be great, or you prove me right and I'm going to tell them and they'll kick you out. So yeah, I mean, the Dalai Lama's training and education is just relentless. I remember in 2012, he was giving the Gala Chakra in Washington, D.C. So when you come to Washington, D.C., you're not just a religious figure, Whether officially or unofficially, you are going to one senator, to another senator, to a vice president, to perhaps president accidentally walking by while accidentally walking by while the vice president is having coffee with you. And so he had to do his Kala Chakra self-empowerment. And usually the self-empowerment takes longer than the actual empowerment. So you can kind of measure the time, So it's like, okay, the program is going to start at 11 in the morning and goes to about 4 with a short break in between. So then add that number of hours. Then his own daily practice that he doesn't change even when he's doing his program. Then basically, when you add up all the numbers, you're like, last night, maybe he had 2 hours to sleep. And like 10 days of that, or 70 something at that point, just back to back to back, and his presence is there, sharp as ever. But as he always says, like, I didn't fall out of the sky this way, Train. So may I become like you. So whoever you are inspired by as an object of refuge, please don't just like, oh, so great, so great, so great, May I come to you so that may I become like you. So this is the taking of refuge and generating bodhichitta together. In the act of seeking refuge, we also actualize this bodhichitta. The style of this sadhana is more in the system of the old tantras rather than the new tantras. In the new tantras, usually, for meditating on emptiness, usually there is a mantra. So, Om Shunyata Jnana Petra Swabhava Atmako Hang, or Om Swabhava Shuddha Savadana Swabhava Shuddha Hang. That's more in the style of the new tantras. In the old tantras, usually there isn't one of those mantras, although there are some cases like the Ratnalingpa Vajakilaya does start with Om Swabhava Shuddha, and here and there, but generally as for your kind of own education and information, in the old tantras, it usually starts with a syllable. So the most common syllable is ah. And reason for ah is in Sanskrit and in Tibetan, ah is the what do you call? I don't know all these grammatical terms, but basically it's the default sound of all sounds. So all your consonants other than your vowels, of course, I, U, E, O, is the vowels, but all the consonants come with the sound a, ga, 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 ka, ga, nga. So the a sound comes with all sounds. This is on the realm of sound and language, right? So then it becomes a potent symbol for emptiness. So emptiness is not instead of form. And emptiness is only relevant when there is form. So is only of any significance because there is ka, na. Otherwise, no meaning. So becomes then this really potent way, very efficient way of pointing us to what is this emptiness that we have to start with. It's not an absence of form. It's that which makes form possible. So here again, there are instructions usually you will read, like, oh, now you visualize everything melting, everything disappearing. Yeah, maybe that helps. I don't know. If it helps, great, But a lot of times I think we fall into the mistake of thinking, oh, that is emptiness. Of course, you always put a footnote. No, that's not emptiness. But then habitually, we think emptiness, we think everything melting away. Like ice cream on a hot summer day. Wow. To me, it's just a mess, that kind of melting. But it's not talking about anything melting away. It's talking about, at least in the context of visualization practice, I think it's more efficient to relate to it, to understand it as you drop all references to what is possible, what is not possible, here, there, this, that. Now, obviously, it's not so easy to just say, oh, drop. What do you mean? Well, we can start with, well, what I mean is don't engage that kind of thinking temporarily. Don't get into the here, there, big, small. Just relax the mind. Let all our usual blah, blah, blah subside. So let it all subside. But let it subside in such a way that you are not treating them as like an enemy that you need to get rid of. But just that if you get out of the way, right? If you get out of your agenda, all of this will just be fine as it is. Your agenda, your fixation. Our agenda, our fixation. Even wanting things to improve is part of that fixation. That as a method here, we temporarily just let that all subside. So just with so meditating on the syllable, also very old practice. So esoteric forms of Buddhism that gone to Japan in the 7th, 8th century, gone to China, from China to Japan. There's this meditating on the syllable in the Shingon and the Tendai esoteric traditions. They have the ajigan, contemplating the syllable So this is a very old. Buddhists also use Then these old tantras also use So this is an earlier layer, and often also associated with the moon syllable, moon disk, a white moon disk. Sun disk is something that came later as these become more elaborate. But the moon has always been a symbol of that pristine nature of the mind. And then sometimes the stands on the moon syllable. Yeah. So this it begins here. Then In the expanse of the okay, now a lot of words come in, right? You didn't get the okay, now, right? Now the elaborations, right? We're too dense. So here it's like and we go right? So then words, more words have to come. In the expanse, right? Of the non-referential, right? Non-referential, like then if you don't know what to do with these words, then you have a lot of references, you know. Non-referential means stop trying to connect this with that and that with this, and expands, right? Non-referential, emptiness, compassion of all phenomena. So this is in the next moment. So just one moment of recognizing the nature of everything. In that next moment, within that nature, so to say, no better way to say it except to leave it at that, right? Within this expanse of the nature, compassion, right? It's its other side. It's this nature's other face. Compassion is a very limited term in English compared to the Tibetan and the Sanskrit. In fact, compassion here is too mixed up with emotions. Like, oh, pity, oh, you know, oh, too bad, oh, I feel so bad, you know. Those qualities are certainly discussed in the Buddha's teachings as kind of ways to build empathy, and then from empathy to actually then move into this tuje in Tibet. So a less emotional, you could say, not that emotions is a problem, but here simply, when we're at this level, when this word compassion turns up, it's something more basic than like feeling the other person's pain and then wanting the other person to be free from pain, which is the characteristic of karuna in the four immeasurable minds. Yes, over there, that's what we're talking about. But over here, when compassion turns up at this level, it's way more subtle than that. So that maybe a closer word in English is talking about resonance. It's talking about resonance. It's talking about, almost you could use woo-woo language, right? You're vibrating on the same level as all things. So that resonance, and this resonance is what then gets elaborated into Buddha's compassion in terms of Buddha liberating beings from suffering. But this is much more subtle, much more basic. The resonance that is present within the emptiness, within the So this is not an this is not an emptiness where, you know, like everything is empty. Oh, this emptiness, there is a resonance, there is a vibration that is vibrating together with everything else. So that you and I are vibrating on that same level. And it is from there. And so in the expanse of the non-referential emptiness compassion of all phenomena, all minds, all things, from within that expanse, then the lotus and the sun, there is a hung syllable. That hung syllable is the essence of our Buddha nature, now taking the form of Hung. Hung here, it's the essence of the 5 Buddha wisdoms, if you want to map it with the system of the 5 Buddhas. So the way you construct this syllable, like again, in the realm of language, there are 5 parts. And so then Vajrayana takes these 5 parts and maps it with the 5 wisdoms of the 5 Buddha families. So in brief, the Hung is seeing clearly in the 5 aspects: the wisdom of the Dharmadhatu, the mirror-like wisdom, the sameness wisdom, wisdom of discernment, all-accomplishing wisdom. So these 5. It's all in this one syllable, Hung. So whenever there is a form appearing, always remember that this form appears for the sake of others. In order for us to be free, we cannot be fixated on any form. But in order for our freedom to have meaning, it needs to be able to resonate with other beings. And then next step, to be good to other beings. So it's always sort of paradoxical, right? Form is emptiness, emptiness form. But it's a powerful paradox, because this is what moves everything. This is what keeps us engaged and not stuck. Yeah? This is what keeps us present and not in pain. There's so many of us right now, it's like, this world has gone so crazy. And some of us are in real pain, And then some of us are just in la la land, like, oh no, everything's fine. But then there's the Buddhists, everything is fine. And the Buddhists, everything is fine. At the heart of it is this kind of, you could say, this paradox. But I see it as this creative tension. There but not there. Empty but clearly appearing. Right? All these terms, many of you are familiar with these terms. So this is what's radiating. Radiating lights, gathering lights. So here, encoded in here, is radiating light is making offerings to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Gathering light is receiving the blessings back. Then in an instant, I'm black, Lady Ekajata. Then the description of her, of you. As a practical thing, you don't need to think too much. Me, you, I don't know, what. See, in Tibetan language, it's possible to just be vague about exactly you or me, or deliberately. But in English, you have to commit to something. And so then you have limited it. That's the problem. But of course, that's all we have, what to say. So we work with this, and then we should know, all these pronouns in here, I, me, you, he, she, it's all fluid, okay, in here. The point is not to have all these, not to get stuck in all these kind of fixed positions. So you don't have to go here, take a picture and turn the other way. Although in some of these old instructions from the 12th century, I've seen they have some, suggestions on how to visualize the deity. So they say, hang a tanka. One example, they say, hang a painting of the deity in the wall behind you and put a mirror in front of you. Yeah. I mean, they didn't say just sit in front and look at that mirror-like quality, that kind of illusory quality. Which then leads to now 2022, one of, again, our Drigung Kagyu teachers that's very known in the West these days, Kyabje Gachen Rinpoche. Now he takes that, right? Takes that to the next level, I would say. But I would say not breaking the spirit of those instructions. He says, more powerful than an empowerment where we're in the same space is an empowerment from the computer screen. What? I mean, Rinpoche is, engaging in skillful means. But part of that is he's saying this. He says, the illusory nature of your experience, he says, you can get something out of that. This is how I'm reading what Rinpoche is saying. I think in the end, it's pointless to debate whether you can or you cannot get an empowerment on the computer, sitting in front of someone. I think that who knows, right? But what he's saying is like now, when you look into the screen, at least what you can capitalize on is the illusory nature of this experience. He says like in a person like this kind, you're sitting in the same room, the Lama has to keep reminding you, okay, remember this is illusory. Okay, this is illusory. Oh, so especially when Rinpoche is beaming this out from like Arizona, where the landline is very using a satellite. The transmission will go to of course you and I would get really annoyed, because Netflix has made us, concretize that, right? Netflix's job is to make it real. But the unstable internet connection is perfect for receiving empowerment. You see the Lama has dissolved. You see the Lama again, and the Lama has dissolved, And then you yell and scream, come on, you all should get a landline, and invest this fiber optics cable so we can see Rinpoche without, Rinpoche changing at all. That's how easily we get fixated and stuck. So anyway, so the more we kind of stop fixating, but not like, checking out, present, the easier it is for Ekajati to turn up. And then for you to say, oh, this is who I am. So first, just do that. Let Ekajati turn up. Don't worry about, wait, I thought she's me. No. Leave that alone. Let Ekajati turn up. And when she turns up, you say, hello, that's me. Start like that, Let Ekajati turn up. Keep it a little mysterious. Just let her turn up. Be patient. And you have to be patient. You can't okay, call me when she turns up, right? This is how most of us do our practice. It's like, okay, call me when she turns up. You think she's going to turn up? No, she's not going to turn up that way. You have to be present. But you are present, but you cannot control this. You let go of control. Then these words, my hair streaming upward, adorned with skulls, snakes, tiger skin skirt, and flowers. Wrathful in demeanor, 4 hands with the right two, a sword and a katri, and the left two, an utpala and a kapala. 2 feet in the reveling posture, dazzling with masses of 5 colored lights. Just let those words come. Then just stay present. And she will turn up at first, like your unstable internet. Gone, 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 gone. Over time, she becomes more present, more present. And that's when you can also like, this is who I am. This is who I am. This is who I am. This is really who I am. Then the sadhana continues. Lights radiate from the three syllables in the three places. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. From Ekajata goes out. And also the seed syllable in the heart, which is a second home, if you want to be very technical about all of it. Then there is Om, Ah, Hum, white, red, blue. Then there is a black hum behind the blue hum, as in more essence. It's the seed syllable of Ekajata. So from these, I guess you could say 4 now syllables, the light goes out, inviting the actual Ekajata. So here, this Ekajata that we allow or we are developing is the Samaya form, the commitment form. The more our heart is committed to realizing Ekajata, the clearer this form will become over time. So someone very near and dear and close to you, I only have to say his or her name. You don't have to think. Turns out. It's that kind of relationship that we have to have. So it's a little harder if you have, 800 of these guys that you have to remember. So that's why they say don't try to do so many deity practice. It's good ultimately to know 800 of them, then you have 800 more ways to benefit others. But for a start, just keep to a few, that is. You keep to a few because, we're Americans, we don't have a staple food, a few days of bread, and then we want pasta, and then we want rice, and then we want gluten-free, and then we like variety. There are 2 ways to handle variety. One is, right, digging 20 wells. Then it'll take a long, long time before you're going to get any water. Maybe not soon enough. The other way of variety is make sure you're digging the same well, but with 20 tools. And so the same well is bodhichitta, actualizing the 2 bodhicittas. Then, doesn't matter. You have 20 tools, great. You have 800 tools, great. Of course, if you spend time collecting tools and you're not digging the well, it's also not going to work. So focus on digging the well. A new tool comes along. Take it in the spirit of, at some point, this tool, I'm going to go to a particular layer of this well where I will need that tool, right? So then you don't have to have this either sometimes chasing empowerments, sometimes running away from empowerments. Then, oh, it's good. No, I should not do that. And I'll get all neurotic with the practice. Keep clear, like the Lojong teaching say, when all your practices converge on a single point, then now you know that you're making progress. And what is this single point? As expressed in the Lojong tradition, it's to overcome self-grasping or to actualize the 2 bodhicittas. So now the Jnanasattvas come. Here just one sentence, to merge inseparably with the commitment being the oneself. Yeah? And so if you like, special effects, there's a notation here. You play your damaru and your drum, your bell. So that's the inviting the Jnanasattvas to merge inseparably with oneself. Then the next line, the empowerment deities confer empowerment. So they come as well. And the Lord of the family turns into one's crown ornament. So that water that overflows to the top of your head turns into, in this case, Akshobhya. The Buddha that's dark blue in color holds a vajra, the immovable one, Akshobhya. Then the 8 offerings, Argyam, Padyam, Pushpe, Dhupe, Aloke, Gende, Nevede, Shabda, Pratyachasroha. This offering I added into this sadhana. The original sadhana composed by Lojie Dung is so brief that the offerings are not even there, because the offerings are covered in the next section in some words. This is, you can say that this pithy sadhana is written from the Ati Yoga point of view, the Dzogchen point of view. Again, now I'm using Dzogchen not as some institution, some tradition, but within the context of the 9 vehicles of the old tantras, the highest vehicle. So this is written from a very pithy point of view, this particular sadhana. So the offering and the praise, you can see that it's all dealing with the mind level, the essence of mind. So on page 5, all that appears and exists, whether of samsara or nirvana, they are all the offering clouds of Samantabhadra. So everything, all our experience of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts, those that are still under the power of confusion and those qualities that are beyond confusion, all of it, it means thoroughly, completely. And so you say, well, I don't know anything about nirvana. Like, well, whatever concept you have of nirvana, understand that all of it, all that appears and exists, whether samsara or nirvana, whether in bondage or freedom from bondage, they have now become the offering clouds of Samantabhadra. Here, Samantabhadra is not the Buddha Samantabhadra, but a reference to the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, who is famous for making extensive offerings in the King of Aspiration prayers. That's the Samantabhadra. So these are the offering clouds of Samantabhadra. One is the naked guy, one is the guy with a lot of jewels. Translation, one of my pet peeves, people who make these publicity posters, if you're out there, okay, ask your Lama what he's teaching. If he's teaching the King of Aspiration prayers, please don't put the naked guy there. That is the primordial Buddha. That's the other Samantabhadra. If the Lama is teaching, this Dzogchen text called also, and to confuse all you non-Tibetans, including myself, also called the aspiration of Samantabhadra, then don't put the Bodhisattva, okay? Put the naked guy. Conceptually different. It's good to have some clarity there. So here is the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, the one who has extensive activities, meaning that he embodies this ability to be vast and infinite and working with forms and sounds so that everything can be brought together for practice, for accumulating merit and wisdom. So all that appears and exists, they have all become the offering clouds of Samantabhadra, which I offer to the boundless, self-appearing, pristine deity. Who or what is this boundless, self-appearing, pristine deity? In the expanse of the primordially uncontrived ground of all knowing, I praise you, the deity, who is the all-illuminating, miraculous display of my own mind. So that is the pristine deity, the very nature of your own mind, which is none other than Ekajati in this case. So all of experiences in its pristine nature is offered back into the pristine nature of reality. So doing nothing in particular in the end. Doing nothing in particular, Why do it? Because it's the natural expression of this state. Then sometimes expressed as, the play of the mind. When we are in a state of bondage, right, the play of the mind manifests as the bondage of samsara. When free from this confusion, the same play of mind manifests as Buddha activities. So nothing really changes except for perception. But right now, perception is in control of everything. And so then we have to work with this perception. We have to change this perception. Things as they are don't change, as in the nature of things. They have always been like this. But how they appear, that changes. So this is the offering and praise in a very pithy kind of stated from this highest understanding, at least highest on this end of confusion. It's still relative, Yeah, it's still relative. I know, you're like, then what is the ultimate? Nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about. Cannot be talked about. So suffering is a problem of the relative. So everything the Buddha gave was to deal with this relative problem. Buddha has no need really to talk about the ultimate, because you get it, you get it. You don't get it, no amount of talking is going to get you there. Now the recitation, the mantra garland turns around this home, standing on the sun in the heart, making offerings to the conquerors, to the Buddhas, gathering blessings, and purifying migratory beings, wandering beings of their two obscurations. The two obscuration is the obscuration with regards to self and obscuration with regards to phenomena. So one is a personal fixation, one is fixating on other things having unchanging essences. So clearing both those types of confusions. All that exists and appears spontaneously turn into the three vajras, meaning the indestructible nature of awakened body, speech, and mind. So everything now is in the Buddha state. So from that being in the Buddha state, right, then the mantra resounding turns up, then sound. Just like the form of Ekajata, let that form turn up. Now let the mantra, let the deity arise in the form of sound. Let that mantra resound. Om, Hring, Tring, Hung, He. Those funny diacritic marks, M with the dot is a nasalization. So it's Om, Hring, Ting, Ting, Hung, He. Om, Hring, Ting, Hung, He. Not Hrim, no. Nasalization. Om, Hring, Ting, Hung, He. So you recite the mantra. Originally, mantra recitation is for the mind to rest when it wants something other than the presence as the deity. So you kind of go back and forth between just quietly remaining in the state as the deity, manifesting as the deity, manifesting as Ekajata. Ekajata has turned up, content to just be in that state, and perhaps, feeling this light activity going out and coming back in. And there's so many levels of working at that as necessary. So that can be a basis of practicing what you call the Maitri practice, radiating out kindness and breathing back in kindness. When this experience of kindness or loving kindness have become strong and stable, then you can do the slightly more dangerous thing of breathing in other people's suffering. Don't start off that way, like we have enough suffering, all of us. Yes, it sounds really noble, but boy, your own suffering is enough. Yeah. So first dispel that. Yeah. Stabilize that with, actually it says, between kindness and compassion, compassion takes a lot more skill because you have to open that door for suffering to come in. But if you don't have a handle on suffering, absolutely no handle on suffering yet, immediately you open the door for suffering to come in, it might overwhelm you because of the way we have been wired. So that door don't open so quickly. Not because you think it's bad, but it's just about how doable it is right now. Yeah. So it's like when you are sprouting, a seed, you have to find the right conditions to sprout it. Your aspiration is for it to grow into a strong tree that can benefit others. So even in the compassion, there's the thing about how, this tree that you're going to sprout and grow, its leaves can cure any disease. You're not going to pluck it, when it sprouts because you want to save someone. Not because you don't want to save that person, but you want this to grow into a great tree because every leaf can benefit, can save others. So likewise, you start with the practice of loving kindness. Breathing in loving kindness, breathing out loving kindness. Then when you have a handle on suffering, then you open that door. Then when you feel other people's pain, you can tap into that resonating. When you're resonating with them, there's no more me, you, too much, too little. And it comes from the natural state. That is the tukje. That is the noble heart of the Buddhists. Then there's the contrived compassion that we have to train, we have to cultivate. This contrived compassion, if we know how to take it to meet the natural arising from within the emptiness state, then these two can connect. So during the recitation, there's many activities that you can bring into. So as you learn more about Vajrayana activities, more and more, you can, one sadhana can be used to cover all the bases. So generally speaking, this is the principle of destruction, which is the fourth of the four Buddha activities. And this destruction is wrathful, is terrifying because it's destroying our habits. And that's really unnerving. Habits are very familiar, even if we know they ultimately cause problems. But we have been with them for so long, that losing that familiarity is unnerving, and terrifying. And so if Ekajata looks terrifying and unnerving, it's because her activity is to destroy. Kind of like Shiva, In the Hindu tradition, the destroyer. This is the one that destroys our self-grasping, our fixation. And it's terrifying. That's why it's the fourth of the four activities. You start with pacifying. That's like, start with loving kindness. Yeah. Start by pacifying, cooling down, cooling down, cooling down. So when you know how to cool down, then you can be expansive, right? The second Buddha quality activity of being expansive, abundance. Then that expansiveness becomes the basis for attracting, to enchant, to enthrall. The third Buddha activity. Then when you have these three activities kind of stabilized, then destruction can happen in a way that is not going to make you freak out. You become the terror itself. So now you happily terrorize your confusion. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Right? There's one form of Vajrayogini, the headless Vajrayogini, you know? So it's like she lops off her own head. And so, of course, you know, blood is springing out like a fountain. And then she has like 2 cups, like filling up the blood and going glub, 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 right? You're like, how crazy is this, right? So this is when you get to the point where you happily crush and destroy self-grasping. And that actually, the more you destroy self-grasping, the more powerful you become, so to say. As in, for once now, finally, true power comes in, rather than force. It's not force anymore, it's power. It's true power. The notion that you find in the Tao Te Ching, that the is power, it's virtue. The same word in Chinese, right? The. So how to obtain the that comes from the Tao, that comes from the way things are as they are, rather than the kind of power that comes from force, which is where we often think of power. So after this, after the mantra recitation in this sadhana, I offer oceans of offerings, both physically present and mentally created, and praise you, deities who are the all-encompassing purity of samsara and nirvana. Forgive whatever errors, confusions, mistakes made. Please bear with me, make me whole again, and grant the siddhis. Once again, you make offerings, you make praise, praising the deities who are the all-encompassing, pristine nature of samsara and nirvana. Then still, you know, you say, whatever lapses, whatever mistakes, whatever confusions, bear with me, restore wholeness to. So any lapses in the practice, basically, then you recite the 100-syllable mantra. Then at the end, this declaration, this was composed by the founder of Mindroling Monastery, Terdat Lingpa. It's his last testament when he achieved rainbow body. I think if I remember correctly, these were the last words heard when his whole body dissolved into rainbow. It says, appearance, sound, and cognition. Cognition means the mind that perceives, right? That moment, moment to moment cognition. So appearance, sound, and cognition, they are all in the state of deities, mantras, and dharmakaya. So appearance, the appearance of a deity. Sound, mantra. Cognition is dharmakaya. Merge uninterruptedly as the play of the kayas. The kayas are the Buddha bodies. The play of the kayas and the wisdoms of the kayas. In this profound and secret practice of Mahayoga, May they be of one taste, indivisible in the heart bindu. So this is the dissolution stage. So Tadat Lingpa, as he dissolved in the Dharma Dhatu, like pass away. This is how we should dissolve this visualization of Ekajata. So again, no need, like to follow too much of the technique. Oh, outer universe dissolve into the deities, the daisies dissolve into this, and this dissolve into that, that dissolve into that. Don't get me wrong, there are traditions of practicing this that are very methodical in that way. And there are advantages to that. The mind becomes very sharp, very clear. But for many of us, that adds a lot of stress to your practice. So you develop the parts that you can more easily develop now, which is to have a more expansive experience of this before you pick up all the details. In the end, yes, both sides are part of this training. But here, this kind of dissolution is very much the same as the kind of arising where it is not forced, where it's simply reminding us, you remind yourself of the pristine nature of things, how things arise, and when they arise for the benefit of beings, and how they dissolve, they're going back to their natural state. That's all. Right? So now, these words, right? Again, they are fingers pointing to the moon, and if you get too technical about this, you try to go define every single word every time you do this practice, you get really stuck. But over time, as you learn more, as you receive more instructions and teachings about this, then these words will begin to come alive for you. So don't get stuck in these words. So may they be of one taste, indivisible in the heart bindu. So everything kind of that has unfolded from the heart, so to say, now they all dissolve back into the heart mind, where it all came from in the first place. So now everything subsides again. From here, you arise with a wish. May the days and nights be auspicious, and the mid-hours be auspicious too. May the days and nights always be auspicious. All three jewels grant this here and now. Okay, before you, kind of like disappear into la la land, everything is just fine. You come back now and pray for others, May everything be good for everyone. May everything be good for everyone. Again, that paradox, In reality, nothing happens. But in this reality, all kinds of things are happening. And because beings are suffering, we pray for their relief of suffering. And so this, may the days and nights be auspicious. Very popular, well-known, auspicious prayer at the end. Yeah, so this is the brief sadhana of Ekajata. Questions, comments, complaints? I don't know who takes them these days. Not here, maybe the person. Let's see who's all there. Are you seeing the chat? You want to read out just?
Maria says, thank you very much. It's a practice for our minds to liberation.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. May it be so.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did this one say, I'm used to doing Om Ahum.
Ahum. Yeah.
Yeah, Om Ahum. And was this one Hum?
Hum.
So
Hum.
okay, right. But
not right? Not hum. Hum. Nasalization, the anuswara.
so it's Ahum.
Hum. Hum.
Okay.
Yeah. Hum.
So you do say Om at the top.
Yes.
Okay,
Always.
Okay. Well, I've got. Yeah, I got a little confused.
Unless you're a bumper, then something else for the 3 syllables.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Okay.
Buddhist. Hum.
Right. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bumper is hum or something like that. Yeah. You gotta be different,
Dr. Lai, I have a question. I don't know whether, I don't know how to explain what the question is though, really. So thinking of Ekajata as coming out of the Dharmakaya, it's
Yes.
almost like with Prajnaparamita, it's almost like, how does she even have a form? She's so non-referential on one hand. And how did she become a protector? I mean, of all the, like, different than Vajra Yogini as a protector, or that, like, some of the other wrathful deities aren't protectors. How did that come about?
When you become her, you will know.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Or you don't have to wait until you're exactly her. The closer you become her, then you begin to understand how, how she manifests as a Dharmapala. And she's a Dharmapala in the old Tantras. There's a whole range of Dharmapalas, There are the Dharmapalas that are basically like the, spiritual plumbers, She's not that kind of Dharmapala. Her kind of protection is the protection from dualism, I mean, intellectually we're like, ooh, wonderful. But then, you and me, daily basis, like, what good is that? I mean, when I'm not putting on a Buddhist hat and looking a Buddhist best, protection from dualism, you're like, right now I don't need that. I just have a very pesky neighbor that I need to know what to do with them, right? So then people think of Dharmapala as playing that role, but really, the true protection is the protection from dualistic mind. Joking aside. So it might even seem like she's not doing much for you in that sense, because our priorities are somewhere else. Yeah, our priorities are somewhere else. So in that sense, you can say that her protection is so advanced.
Mhm.
Now, of course, there are people who relate to her and turn her into a lesser protector. So to the point, to the degree of, again, the Lojong teaching say, don't turn gods into demons, which we do all the time. Most people, for example, practicing Jambala, they practice Jambala as a hungry ghost. Because the more Jambala they practice, the more hungry they become.
Mm. Mhm.
And Kurukule, the more Kurukule they do, the more suffering they have.
Mm.
Where is that boyfriend I've been waiting for, On the relative side, meaning like in historical development, yeah. So if your question is from that side, it's curious, how certain deities kind of develop certain in a certain direction, So look at Ekajata, the Idam also becomes the Ekajati, the Dharmapala. So there are historical processes that might be lost to us at this point until somebody unearths some term somewhere.
Yeah, I think the question really was both the deeper level of protection and also the historical. So thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Lai, one of the things I wanted to know is if you wanted to practice the sadhana in retreat, I guess, kind of getting to building a closer relationship with the deity, how would you practice this? Is there a format for the for that kind of retreat, or how would you practice retreat with Ekajata?
Basically, it would be this sadhana is short, So if you're not easily bored, sure, you can, actually get a lot out of it because it's so compact. It's written from Ati Yoga point of view. So the deity is from the Ati Yoga point of view, the offerings are Ati Yoga point of view, the ground is from the Ati Yoga point of view. So if you have already received instructions, whether it's nature of mind or, from the Mahamudra side or the Dzogchen side, you can practice this and get a lot out of it, so to say. But there isn't a lot of ritual activity to fill up all the spaces. So you have to do the terrifying thing of watching the mind, rather than, pick this up, put that down, The more typical retreat sadhanas, they're like this stick, So the whole day you're just like turning pages and making ritual things and turning pages. And I mean, there's a method to that, Then over time, you begin to move in a different direction, if you do it right? And pages don't need to turn anymore. So there's a little bit more in that sense. Here, it starts off being so pithy, right? That you might actually find it really hard, actually really challenging. I don't mean hard in a bad way, but challenging is like, wow, this is not so easy. Ironically, it's easy as a daily practice they call gyunge. Gyunge meaning like carrying it forward. so that you don't break a connection. So there's a category of practice called gyun-gir. So this gyun is to continuity, the gir to take it, to continue it. So this is a gyun-gir style of practice, just to maintain that continuity. But just because it's written in the gyun-gir style doesn't mean that you can't do it as a retreat in a more kind of focused way. But in a more focused way, then I would say not even so much in the mantra recitation. You work with it because it's so compact. You work it with it section by section. So each session, you would still want to go from beginning to end. But for each session, you park yourself in a different place.
Someone asks,
Thank you.
The 21 Taras, which one do you recommend? Which one do you recommend practicing for beginners?
Usually green Tara, which by the way is not one of the 21. No, sorry, is one of the 21 actually. Kadira Varatara, the main one, which is the Kadira forest green Tara. What is not in the 21 Taras is white Tara. Like what? The two most common forms is the green and the white Taras, right? And so they are always good places to start. The 21 Taras, again, historically, it's not really 21 Taras. It's 21 verses of praise to Tara. Tara has all these qualities. Over time, the iconography of individual Taras came about. And so you have 21 distinctive forms of Tara. And so the basic form is what we call the green Tara. And so the basic Tara then has all these qualities that are expressed in the 21 verses of praise. So question?
Is it correct that Kurukule is red Tara while Ekajata is black?
In that red Tara, in that Kurukule is red color. There is a white Kurukule as well. Ekajata is black, blue-black. But in the 21 forms of Tara, there are several that are red and there are several that are black. So it all depends on, what people mean, when they say colors.
Is Ekajati an enlightened protector, unlike the main or what?
Yes. She's manifested from the Dharmadhatu, Samantabhadri, in the aspect of protector. So more important on whether this deity or that deity is enlightened or not is how we are relating to them. If you relate to an enlightened deity like they are, your servant, then they just turn into that. Okay, so we've already passed the time that we say we're going to end. So as I always say, I know you all have pets and people that are waiting for you. I don't want your pets or your people to resent your interest in the Dharma. So we should not go over too much. If you have pets and people to return to, go get them something nice, you know. Then they say, ooh, every time he goes to Dharma, we get something nice, you know. Then less obstacle that way, you know. So we will end very simply with taking a moment. Actually, not so simply. We will end with Nathan. You have the blue book, the dedication that will be done, because I often, at the end, lack of presence of mind, I still have a few things I have to do at the very end. So as I do this concluding, you all should do the dedication. If you don't have the text, you dedicate by really listening to what is being said.
So, in the blue book on page 142,
The dedication.
Great Madhudara, Divika, Naropa, Marpa, Nilarika, Dharma,
Alex.
Homo, Krupa, and Conqueror, Vipompa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessings of all the God Gurus. By this merit may I achieve the omniscient state, may all who wander on the waves of earth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies. Where it is born may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray for the excellent talents of the Gurus, may the Gurus supreme blessings belong to the Gurus' activities spread far and wide. May I be blessed not be separated from the Gurus as the road
Ekajata Saparivara Sashabda Padejaya. Sanjay Tham Cheki Kinsin the Bingo, Jema Chaza.
All sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious, enlightenment. The teachings of the great Rumpa are not free.
Give a day and never do that, a Pachima to journey, to watch a Malabada is a local Omoto Kakyavadu Gumpaka Julamanam Jedoshi. Some butchers interest in my using Sandro Ajito. Okay, ta-ta.
So thank you very much, Dr. Watt, our Dr. Master, for the environment today and for all of the teachings. So for those of you here in the temple, there's now an opportunity to engage in the tradition of offering a gift, offering of dana, your resources, thanksgiving to the teacher for the teachings today. So those of you in the temple, there are katas to use on top of the donation box. There's also some envelopes there. And for those of you who are joining from afar, I believe that Omar has shared in the chat here some details to do that as well. So thank you all very much for coming today. And for those of you who are local, we would love to see you back at the future programs. So please stay tuned. Thank you.
Ta-ta. Bye-bye. Are you not allowing them to make sounds?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
Dr.
soon.
Lai.
you.